Minister, this is to ask you the progress made in considering the strategic rail review since the establishment of the Northern Ireland Assembly, and can you give some indication as to when this rail review that everyone's been waiting for a long time will actually be finally published?
Mr. Ryan.
I won't read out the written response because it's very similar to what Deputy Mayor Harkin would have heard only 2 minutes ago.
Yeah, and I'm part of the chairing committee at that stage.
No, but it'll be available in written format to you in any case. But if I can answer your question directly myself. Well, firstly, the strategic rail review has been very public for over a year and a half now, I think, isn't it? Because we had to go to a strategic environmental assessment. We made the decision that in advance of the Assembly returning in the North that we would publish it, because we had to go into that public consultation. So the details are very clear. And that consultation process is finished, and we will, within the coming weeks, in my mind, subject to our Northern colleagues also agreeing it, be able to publish and then really focus on the delivery end. And we need to deliver now. To do that, we've employed the European Investment Bank to do a review of how we would actually prioritise which projects would we deliver and prioritise. And your question relates to obviously well, it doesn't, but maybe if I can focus on one aspect of it, which I think you will be interested in, with regard to the Western Rail Corridor, which is probably one of the more contentious elements, because to this date in the past, when you ask the system, should we reopen the Western Rail Corridor, they would say it doesn't make economic sense. The business case is desperate, it doesn't, but I think they were looking at it in too narrow a focus. They were looking just at passenger rail services, which we do need to reintroduce in the line, but they didn't take into account the potential development of rail freight as an option for our country, which would make the economic case for the Western Rail Corridor, not just from the section from Athenry to Claremorris, but in my mind a much wider assessment of a Western Rail Corridor running all the way from Ballina down the west coast, Limerick, down to Waterford and Wexford. And it's in that context it makes strategic sense. And what I hope to do in the coming months is to make that case, and to increase that up the prioritisation order as part of our balanced regional development and economic revival of the West, because I believe industries will want to come now where there's a decarbonising option, where you've got high quality public transport and rail freight services which allow economic development to occur in the Western Rail Corridor. That's not the conventional wisdom, that's not commonly accepted, but I believe that argument needs to be had and made in the coming months so that we give a clear signal that that economic project is going to go ahead with priority.
Minister, it's a relatively recent invention of government that the pure economic case of everything has to be justified. There are lots of things we do in society for societal good that don't make economic sense, but they make social sense, they make regional balance sense, they make common sense, which is becoming very uncommon. Minister, can you outline to me what are the procedures that you've outlined? The first one, you've gone and asked the European Investment Bank to look at this. Could you outline the procedures we're going to have between now and actually making firm decisions? Project A, B, C, D and E are going ahead under the strategic rail review.
I would agree with you fully, and I would add to your list of common sense considerations we have to take into account is the environmental issue. Because what the opponents of investing in rail freight argue is that it's not economic, doesn't make sense, but they don't answer the alternative question is how do you intend to decarbonise our haulage system? And don't take that into account as a key strategic objective that we have to meet, as well as the other ones you said in terms of better balanced regional development, social advancement and so on. And I think that is the key issue in my mind which will get the Western Rail Corridor over the line. The EIB project is a very short one. It's to set out an implementation plan on the strategy. It will be concluded very quickly. That has not stopped us, and again I'm focusing on the Western Rail Corridor here because I know you have a personal interest in it and have been committed to it for a long period of time. That has not stopped us already this spring starting to clear the line. So similar to what we did on the Shannon Foynes reopening of the line, we start to get a much better assessment as what is the state of the line, what would actually be required to get it to be reopened. So we haven't just sat and waited for reports to conclude, we've started to take action. And actually what you realise when you do that is the line is in a much better state than people might think. The planning obstacles are much less compared to other projects because it's within the curtilage of an Irish Rail existing corridor that it's actually much easier and much quicker to restore such lines than people previously thought. We've seen that in Foynes. I think we can see the same on the Western Rail corridor.
Deputy O'Cuív, and then a supplementary from Deputy Kennedy, and then final word to the Minister.
Minister, I provided funding, I think it was €5 million, to clear the line from Collooney all the way down to the Clore boundary, which was south of Claremorris, back in 2006. What we need now is construction. We know it's intact. We've been trying to explain that for a long, long time, and it's intact from Collooney, and they cleared a section of that line last year. But perennially clearing the line isn't building the line. I have an interesting question for you, because the biggest cost inhibitor is a thing called building inflation. So can you tell me, what has the building inflation been since the strategic rail review started, I think 3 or 4 years ago? So in that time, what is it going to cost to do now compared to what it would cost if we had done it, say, 2 years ago, and the rail review and the strategic process and all the rest only took 2 years? Because the reality is, the thing that's running away with us all the time, as you know, is cost inflation of construction, not all these reports and so on. They're not saving us any money. They're actually costing us money by delay. Can you tell me, compared to starting it, when you started the rail review, that one project, the Western Rail Corridor, what would it have cost? In relative terms, is it 20% building inflation since, or 30%? I think that's a very, very fair question and relevant question.
And a supplementary from
Both Deputy Kennedy and Deputy O'Cuív, just to get the same clarity I gave to Deputy Harkin earlier, the rail review does not propose the reintroduction of the line to Collooney, and I believe in those contexts it's better to keep the line as a greenway, and this is a 30-year investment timeline. And to answer your question, Deputy Cuív, about the inflation aspect, we have to think of this in a 30-year. It's almost, I think, roughly £1 billion a year over that period. And in that regard, the inflation issue obviously has been very acute in the last 2 to 3 years, but this is a longer-term immediate strategic issue. The reason, to answer Deputy's question point about passenger numbers, I would agree. I think the evidence against what was expected when we reopened the line from Ennis to Galway, the passenger numbers far exceeded those who doubt public transport, because it is really attractive to Irish people. They really want good public transport service. And I believe, but the reason I concentrate on the rail freight issue is because the economics of the whole project and the economic development opportunity for the West in a decarbonised haulage system is far greater. And what we know is what we need to do immediately is to order wagons so that we can start the rail freight revival in the likes of Waterford Port and the likes of Shannon Foynes, but also through Dublin Port and other locations. And that then gives you a wider network where the Western Rail Corridor starts to come into play, because you can export through Foynes, through this network, or indeed right the way down through Rosslare or through Dublin. It's an interconnected natural system. The benefit is the new rail freight wagons travel at the same speed as passenger services, so you can run the two on the same line. They actually complement and don't interrupt each other. But there needs to be a political, I'll come back to this point, this is contested. Not everyone agrees. It does require, as you say, Deputy O'Cuív, to take a slightly big, bold, longer-term vision. And I believe if you go to talk to all those businesses, which I'm sure you do, along the Western Rail Corridor and say, do you want a low-carbon haulage solution out, so because they have an obligation to be zero carbon in their operations, the answer will be yes. People all think that the current system is economic because they're judging it on what is a historic fossil fuel transport system. We're switching to an electric system. We have to decarbonise the transport system. And in those circumstances, the likes of Marshall Yard, the likes of Claremorris, across Malina or other location, will actually give you a system which I believe can work. Now, the EIB are going to assess that recommendation, which was included in the Strategic Rail Review. It will be concluded very quickly, within a matter of months, not years. And then we need to start making economic investment decisions in our ports, on the railway freight wagons, and on the reopening of that line, because it's a network system. That missing piece kills the network benefits, particularly for Mayo and Galway and those counties in the northwest. And that's why I think it's a critical issue that we do need to collectively consider in the coming months.
Thank you,
and come to a decision.
Thank you, Minister.